I want to ask some of the filmmakers and Toyota to join me here. Kief Davidson is an Academy Award-nominated documentarian and director of some TV commercials. His feature doc, Beyond the Brick, about the diverse world of Lego, premiered this summer and will soon be released on DVD. His short film, Open Heart, followed 8 Ugandan children on a perilous journey to get high-risk surgery at the entire continent of Africa's only high-tech, free-of-charge heart surgery hospital. Kief also directed the award-winning feature-length doc Kasim the Dream, about a former child soldier turned boxing champion, and The Devil's Miner, about a child laborer in a Bolivian silver mine. Ross Kauffman is the director, producer, cinematographer, and co-editor of Born into Brothels, about the children of Calcutta's prostitutes. It won the 2005 Academy Award for Best Documentary. He is currently working on a variety of projects, including Exposure, a scripted television series following the lives of 5 present-day photojournalists around the globe. And he's also working on the documentary And Wait for Me, chronicling the story of a mother's spiritual and emotional search for her son who went missing 23 years ago. It's actually called Wait for Me. It's not called And Wait for Me. The and was a word that I wrote myself. And then there is their benefactor. Marjorie Schussel is Director of Integrated Brand Communication at Toyota, which underwrote these films. Toyota, as we have come to discover, is much like the Medici, only much better rated by J.D. Power. Marjorie, Kief, Ross, come on down to the stage, please. Wherever you're comfortable.
Oh, thank you.
Ross, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine. Actually, I knew that because we had this conversation previously.
Yeah. Deja vu. All over again. That's in honor of Yogi Berra.
Coming Home, the story about New Orleans and the rebuilding effort of so many people's homes. It's poignant and inspiring for sure, but in terms of urgency and truth-telling, Born into Brothels, it isn't. What's the difference between going to work to do that and doing what you do when you're making feature docs?
You know, Born in Brothels is one of those films that we just took on. We just did. There was no money involved. There was $80,000 of credit card debt amassed, pretty much the day before Sundance. It took 4 years. It's one of those passion projects that you do because you just feel like it's the only thing. And it was a huge gamble. But, and I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying when we're making these films, whether it's a film about Toyota's production system, whether it's a film about Goldman Sachs' 10,000 Women's Initiative, which I've worked with them, we're still telling stories. And that's important to remember. Like, we're still telling stories. And for us, or for me, it's all about emotion. So whether it's kids in India, whether it's Mrs. B getting her home back after 10 years, to me, those are very powerful stories. And those are stories I want to be, I want to have a part in telling.
How about you, Kief? You've done a Bolivian child laborer and a Ugandan child soldier kidnapped into conscription. Toyota made an eye clinic more efficient. Is there a gravitas gap?
I don't really look at it that way. I mean, I follow along with the Ross as well. I mean, I gravitate towards personal stories and trying to find unique ways to have people feel for the characters that are in those stories. So in the case of Saving Sight, my interest in telling the story was really to try to find someone who was going through this, someone that represented the problem at this hospital, which was not easy to find, actually, because now all of a sudden you're having to go through, there's privacy issues and going through the hospitals, working with the hospital. But we did get lucky with it. But for me, it's, I find that these films really are not all that different. It's actually, they're challenging in its own right to try to tell a story in such a short form and still have an audience emotionally for it to emotionally resonate. So there's just different challenges involved, whether it's a 90-minute or a 40-minute or a 5-minute. And sometimes I feel like the 5 minutes and even the 2 minutes are just as challenging in their own right.
And I think you succeeded. I mean, I think these stories all did resonate. Was there anybody who was, sitting there uninterested in what was taking place on the screen? If the answer is yes,
just raise your hands. Come on, because we'll throw you out quickly.
And I've spent 25 years deconstructing advertising on every level of communication and business strategy and cinematography and photo composition, you name it, on all criteria. So when I look at any kind of commercial film, my inclination is to go, okay, next, I've seen this idea, next. But at no point did you guys lose me even for a second. And was anybody else struck by how analog these solutions were? You expect them to come in with Cray supercomputers, right? No, let's use a whiteboard and masking tape. The hidden in plain view, right? You guys have both also done some plain commercial work, and that's done with storyboards and clients lurking on the set, watching your every move. How is this process different than doing actual TV commercials?
We've done probably 2 or 3 projects with Cineland at this point. I think the greatest difference is we're given a really long leash, I guess. They let us do our job, which is to really find the story and give us the amount of time that we need in pre-production to make our stories work. And one thing I tend to find in traditional advertising is a lot of times you just don't have the time. Things move really, really fast. Next thing you know, you have to shoot this thing in a week. And if that was the case with Saving Sight, I wouldn't have been able to pull it off because it took close to a month or so before we actually found her. So that's a big difference. It's really giving us the time sometimes to do our job. And when you're making documentary films, pre-production really is all of it. It's finding that right character. Without that right character, I would have been left with a supply closet. Yeah. Which, when I first got the call, my inclination was like, I don't know if I should do this. How am I going to make this work once I visited the hospital? So it's finding that character and having the time to play.
I was just thinking about this idea of building trust, and building trust is something that usually takes a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of, you really spend that time. Part of our job is to build trust really quickly. And in these situations, even though we have more time than a typical commercial, that's a huge part of our job. If we don't build that trust, we're not going to get people to, trust us with their emotions on screen. And that's a huge part of it. So these kinds of films, and I've done commercials where it was also about building trust. They're real people commercials. And it's just, that's, to me, the fun of it. When Zan and I went down, Zan, my producer's here, Zan Parker, and Will Rogers, my editor. When Zan and I went down and visited Zach, who's also here, it was one of those things where we walk into an office and Zach's like, who are these guys? You were just like, all right, let's go. And I think by the time we finished up and with that first scouting trip, I think we had a rapport, and that's a huge part of the job, is just to, and finding Mrs. B. Mrs. B did not want to be on camera at first, quite honestly. But we went and talked to her, and we did what we do.
I want to talk more about trust. Marjorie? I'm not ready for you yet. But I will be very shortly. I want to talk about trust a little bit, but not trust with the subjects, trust with the audience. Because it seems to me that when you get in an enterprise like this, which is a filmmaking project with a commercial sponsor, with some sort of corporate message to communicate, it's a pretty tough balance, right? If you turn it into a commercial, and the audience goes, ugh, it's a commercial, you've lost them there. And if you keep the sponsor's message entirely out of it, or so obscured that the brand name is reduced to, a disinterested party in the storytelling, then you've wasted your sponsor's money. And if you so deftly weave the brand into the narrative that people get really caught up in the story, and they just kind of forget that there's any kind of commercial connection, well, then you've kind of tricked them. It's like native advertising where the audience is being deceived into thinking that it's, editorial content when in fact it's got some sort of commercial basis. So how the hell do you keep all that in balance? Which, by the way, in my view, you did. Did they not? Yeah. Yeah, so well done. How did you do that trick? Not you. I'm asking you to say.
I want to talk so badly.
I know you. And we're going to make that happen very, very shortly. I just want to run these guys through the ringer one more time. Say words out loud.
So, the words I would like to say. Well, no, it was with this. It was actually pretty easy because when we got on the phone, one of our initial calls. First of all, finding out the story that this huge corporation actually does something good. Wow, that's something we can actually celebrate, as opposed to feeling bad about corporations, which a lot of us mostly do. I mean, the fact that Toyota actually helps these nonprofits and companies around the country without getting paid, it's amazing. So I was actually inspired by that. That was easy for me. Now, in the making of a film, when we're balancing, and it's all balancing, every single film is a balancing act. You're going through not only the casting, every single process, every single piece of the process along the way is about balance. We're trying to find the right balance of that story, and it was very interesting, talking with Toyota, talking with all the parties involved, and trying to find that, and everyone getting what they wanted. At times it was hard. It was hard for me personally at times, but it wasn't so hard because we were all on the same page that we were able to feel good at the end of the day that the message we were getting across was a good one and it was positive.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost felt I had a responsibility at a certain point to actually make it, because the first thing I did when I found out about the project was visit the hospital. And the first thing I saw was the supply closet and a bunch of clipboards, and I'm like, wow, this is really boring. And I was concerned. I was like, I'm not going to take this job because I don't know how to tell this story. But then I sat down with Susan Black, who's in Saving Sight, who runs the Toyota production service within the hospital, and she was so passionate and so grateful that we were there, and everyone I spoke with there was just such big fans of what Toyota has done, and it was a real collaboration. They didn't.
Did you suggest like a motorcycle chase scene just to get the?
I'm dying to blow something up, and every project I try to find a way to just like go die hard, and it never works. But I kind of left those initial meetings feeling like, how could I not do this for them? Because they were just so enthusiastic about what they accomplished there. And that sort of changed my feeling on it. I called Cinelan back and I said, you know what, these people are amazing and they've done really great work. It's going to be a challenge, but let's find a way to do it. It may take a little bit more time.
Actually, you did a better job in your films, not just making Toyota out as some sort of godly force than you're doing right here. You're both, you're actually overdoing it. It's not that great.
Well, no, I don't.
Hey, wait a second,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
know about that
Hold
part
on
of
one
it.
second. I just want to say that Toyota is not the only automotive company out there that's doing remarkable things. Just last week, we learned that Volkswagen writes software very, very well. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And we're waiting for Volkswagen to come to us with their Fix-It campaign.
That could be a big job for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ross, I cut you off.
I was just thinking that, there are jobs that I've turned down.
What was the worst?
Shell Oil doing community building in Nigeria. I mean, that's scary. That's actually frightening to me. I'm sorry if anyone here is from Shell Oil. I hope Shell Oil is not a sponsor of the festival. But that was very scary. And I just thought, and it was great money. Oh, my God, it was good money. My wife is still kicking me in the ass.
I have a good one, and I wound up not turning it down. But I got I got a call for, it was a drug company, and I won't mention any names, but the concept was, it was a preventative medicine, an injection basically, that will prevent or minimize the risks of a disease from happening. But it was a highly contagious disease that they said, well, we only want you to film it during an actual outbreak with your crew, and we'll wait until we have the outbreak. And it was, well, first of all, how am I going to get a crew? And then my producer came to me, and I was like, there's no way I'm doing this.
Did you get a phone call? Yes! Yes!
Well,
we have an outbreak. This
Sure.
could really
Well,
go big.
Yeah, it could go big. But no, then he said just what the budget was, and quite frankly, let's be honest, like there's some projects you do because it will help you do your other passion projects.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'll put myself up for this. I'll change my name. No one will know it's me. But of course, I lost the job to someone else, and I just couldn't believe it. Yeah. It's like the worst job on earth.
Well, hold that thought a second. But when you start thinking about like the moral balance of taking corporate jobs and not, Marjorie, I do not mean to belittle the Toyota effect, because all of us came in here today expecting to see something unprofound, and saw something actually quite profound in 3 different places, 3 really poignant stories. And you have to take my word for it. I'm not trying to be insulting when I say that these films, each of them, reminded me of that infomercial where the clown takes a chamois full of gunk and puts it on a oxidized old car, and instantly it turns like showroom new. And you go, I want to get this stuff. This is unbelievable. I want to get me some Toyota effect. I certainly want to bring Toyota into On the Media, because if anybody in the dining room knew what went on in the kitchen, they would not eat in the restaurant. Our production process is pitiful. I would love to get me some of that. But does this sell automobiles?
Yes, I would say it does, especially today. Consumers are cynical in nature in general. I'm one of them, right? We all are. And we want to not only understand the product we're buying, we know so much now with the internet, we're more educated than ever. We want to really know what's behind the company and whether or not we could trust that company too, when we're buying and supporting them with products. So I would say yes. I would say too that, the secret sauce of our stories is, yes, the wonderful work that Toyota is doing, but it's really, some of the people that we have sitting right in front of us here, Jean from ACE, Zach and Liz from SVP, right? Susan Black. Susan Black said what I've been trying to say to the public for the last 23 years that I've worked for Toyota, which is, what the hell is Toyota doing in a hospital? Well, let me tell you. And she does it in such a way that is so much more authentic and credible than any of us could ever do. So, yeah, in the end, it really, I think, helps people connect to our brand and shows that we share our consumers' values. And that's really, really critical, especially today, especially with millennials and any buyer of any brand.
You could have done an ad campaign, and we've all seen them from GE or Dow Chemical. We're
Sure.
Dow Chemical. We care. We're Johnson & Johnson. We care.
Right.
We're
And-
Satan. We care.
Yeah.
But you went the content marketing route. Why?
Well, I mean, there was a time where we went and we shot this, $1 million commercial, and we had so much control, and we ran it on Meet the Press and others, and I watched Meet the Press today. It's a great show. don't stop advertising on it, but we hope that somebody would watch it, right? It's very different now. Now, in order to engage people with so many options out there to them during the day, on social media, TV, otherwise, all different platforms, we really have to give them something that they feel not only that they can relate to, that they might want to share, talk about, participate in some way, versus just talking at them. It's really much more of a conversation now with consumers. And that's why I think we've really hit on something here, which is giving up control to these really talented, amazing filmmakers. It's probably the scariest thing I've ever had to do in my career. It takes a lot of courage, but in the end, the result is so much better than we could have ever done in a 60-second commercial, and we've tried. We've taken to focus groups, we've asked consumers what they think, and they say, go back to selling cars. This is just, we don't trust it. So it does go back to trust on every level, that it's really an authentic story.
Yeah, it's a truism that consumers no longer are listening to brand marketers like Toyota. They're listening to what their friends and family and other circles are saying about Toyota, and that's how they're making their judgments.
Right.
So if you make a commercial, like, can I just want to tell you about the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. In fact, it may be the worst thing that's ever happened in all of human existence. Philip Morris, during the Balkan Wars, when the Kosovo crisis, they evidently did an airlift and dropped $150,000 worth of macaroni and cheese on Kosovar refugees. You know, they owned, at the time, they owned Kraft. And it was a nice, generous act. And then what they did, a couple of years later, was do a $1 million commercial production, filmed in Poland with 1,000 Polish extras wearing headscarves, and retold the story of their generous act, and then spent about $5 million to put that on television. The word repulsive does not quite do the job to describe how cynical that is. And yet, for up until now, that's kind of been, you know, it's kind of been standard behavior in corporate America, to do something nominally munificent and then to spend a fortune telling everybody how great you are. So you didn't do that. But it must have been so hard. I mean, clients are supposed to be saying, make the logo bigger. No, make it bigger. Bigger! When these guys walked in today, they had never even met you before.
That's right.
I'm like, holy shit, that's impossible. So how hard is it for you in your position to let go and let these guys, you know, do what they do?
Yeah, like I said, it's really scary, but when you put trust in people who are so professional and they can tell your story that you're so attached to and you wish everyone knew, and nobody knows about it, right? If you give them the ability to do that in their own vision, behind the lens, and then let the people who are actually living it every day describe to you how they are not only making it work inside their organization, but then spreading it across the entire hospital or company, that's where we win. And I know, you know, we've been doing projects with TSSC. We have some of our wonderful engineers here today for decades now. I think about 20 years. And
Hold on
it's
one
about
second.
time that
Hold on
we
one
tell
second.
the story and do it in such a
You have
beautiful
engineers
way.
here today from Toyota.
Yes.
You've got these folks from ACE Fabrication. You've got your entire crews. Is there anybody in this room who just walked in off the street who isn't related at least by, you know, cousinhood? Okay, good. Marjorie, it is often said that content is king. And other people say, no, content isn't king. That's stupid. Distribution is king. Distribution. You've got to have channels of distribution. I believe that attention is king. There were like 50,000 feature films made last year, and 49,600 of them are, you know, forests that have fallen in the trees. No, that's not right. That's absolutely not right. But trees that have fallen in the forest and nobody ever heard them fall. How do you make sure that these films are seen and shared so that you can build the trust, the very trust that your describing.
Well, I mean, yes, content is king, but distribution has to be a big part of it, right? So we wouldn't share those films perhaps where, my 15-year-old daughter is on Snapchat, for example. We're able to take like-minded content and match it with platforms where people might be interested in that kind of information. And the beauty of distribution too is that you're then able to kind of see how people are interacting with it and optimize based on that. So again, it's kind of a combination of having really compelling content that people can relate to, that is something they might want to share with friends and family, but then also making it relevant to what they're interested in, wherever they happen to be online.
And what happens to these films after we leave here today?
Oh, you're going to see them everywhere. We are putting them on Toyota.com, but we also have a whole plan to share them at cinemas across the country, Spotlight Cinemas, independent film theaters. And this is my first time seeing it on the big screen today, and I think that's going to go over beautifully. It's a captive audience when you're sitting in the theater and you're eating your popcorn, and I'd much rather personally see a film like that than a standard commercial that's trying to sell me something. And as well as it'll be online, and we've also got a whole influencer plan, people sharing and talking about the films as well.
Born into Brothels cost how much?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you, and I'm not going to do that.
No. Well, let me put it to you this way.
Not not a huge amount.
The elephant in the room today is the question of remuneration, especially for the filmmakers here. I think what they just want to know is, how much did you guys get paid? Nobody gets rich making documentary films. Right? Okay, Michael Moore. He's a cheater. But
Let's talk about that. That's interesting.
that would be a great follow-up session. It's really rough going. You've essentially, by being a documentary filmmaker, you've taken something along the lines of a vow of poverty. Along comes an opportunity like this. What goes through your head when a major corporation with an actual checkbook shows up and says, "Work for us"? How important is it to the rest of what you do?
I mean, I wouldn't go as far to say that you've taken a vow of poverty. I do think that the vast majority of people that make films, and when you make your early films for sure, it's 100% passion. You're not doing it for the money. I'd say like my first 2 films, I could have done way better at McDonald's or In-N-Out Burger when you add it all together. But there are opportunities now. There is more avenues for distribution. If you're smart about it, you can find a way to make money in that field. I don't think you're going to get rich, but I look at commercials and brands and entertainment as not just a way to bring in additional income, and that is very important, but I look at it as an opportunity to develop my own craft. Because if I didn't, in the last few years, do these types of projects, I think my documentaries wouldn't be as elevated as they've now become. So, I mean, you meet new crews, you start to take people from commercials that are, unaffordable. You get to play with new toys. You just develop and grow. So I don't look at any of this as being sort of sellout material. I mean, maybe if you did a Friskies cat food thing, it's a little bit sellout. But even with that, I'd take a Friskies job if I was doing 20 other jobs that I loved, and it still helped me make my films.
Mm-hmm. So in the continuum of work, passion, revenue, and so forth, let's say your Academy Award work is here, and Friskies is down here. Okay. Well, it's not. Yeah, Friskies is here.
If you
Philip
like cats,
Morris
Friskies
is over
could
here.
be like way up here.
Comcast is
Right.
is over on
Why don't we say Shell Oil in Nigeria
West Side Highway.
is
Yeah.
over here.
So where's this? Where's Toyota effect?
Again, I don't really look at it on that scale at all. Again, I mean, Ross pointed it out in I
It's
think the
over
very
here.
first sort of question is, this is just another way of telling stories and emotional storytelling. So I mean, I don't know about you, but I really enjoy getting into a commercial or branded content type job because they're short. A lot of times when you're doing these features, you're in it for years and years, and sometimes you just need something light. I mean, that's why I did the Lego documentary. You know, I've done some very heavy projects, and I just wanted to actually make a fun family film for once. You take jobs personally for very different reasons, but I think at the core, at least the reason why I take these types of jobs, because there is a different scale with the commercial work. There's some that it's like bigger dollars. There's others you get calls for that really have no money, even though it is a big brand. And you take those because you think it has a good message or you think it'll be beneficial to your career. So, you know, it does happen, and you look skeptical. You're making a face.
And the other thing is, you know, it's funny because, you know, we're thinking about this edit that we did. You know, there are commercials that, you know, you, as a director, you go, you do your pre-production, your casting, you shoot it, and then you might get a day in the editing room, right? You go a day in the editing room, and then you're done. You get paid. And it's sort of, and you know, it gets up there, it's the agency, it's the client, let them deal with it. We banged this out in the edit room. I mean, we worked really hard. Not just me, not just you, not just our editors, but all of us. Toyota, the agency, everybody involved worked really hard to find the right balance where these films worked as films, but also told the story of Toyota and what they do. And that sweat that you go through in the edit room, it's just something that we as documentary filmmakers are used to, and it's something like I wish I didn't do because my life would be a lot easier. You know, it'd be a lot nicer if I didn't have to stay in those edit and just really worry and fret over. But that's I think that's why these films, if they work, is because we really actually care about telling great stories.
Well, them's pretty words, but here's the question I really am trying to drag out of your mouths. When you go to one of your documentarian parties, right? And there's people there in ironic T-shirts, and someone's, I guess, playing the
Ironic
bongos
t-shirt.
and
Bongos.
various quinoa foodstuffs.
Have you been to any like this?
When you walk
We can't
in,
afford quinoa.
when you walk into a party,
Yeah.
do people look at you like you are repulsive, or are they like, "How did you get that gig? How did you get the Toyota gig? Where do you stand in this? Do you gain or lose stature with your colleagues?"
Yeah. I honestly, I can't tell how people look at me. I can't read their minds. I can guess, but I'm not in the guessing game. I look at other people who've done commercials, and my reaction to them, it's not about if they did a commercial or not. Is the work good? Is there quality there? That's all. I mean, that's what I see, and that's sort of what, if we're talking about documentary filmmaking, or if we're talking about commercials, if we're talking about narrative filmmaking, is it a good story? Is it well told? Is it beautiful? I mean, you did a great
let's
job.
ask
Wait,
that
I just
question.
wanted to say this. You did a great job. I mean, that's a beautiful film you did there. No, seriously, that's a.
So who
I'm a little jealous, and it's good when I get
you
jealous
watched
because it makes
these
me want
films?
to. Yeah.
Did you watch 3 films, or did you watch 3 crappy commercials? Did we just see 3 lovely, poignant, affecting films, or did we not? Yes, I guess you've done good. I could probably try to get you into the bongo party.
Sure, I'd like to check out this bongo party.
Yeah.
Bongo party. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have time to go to many parties. You know.
I have plenty of time.
Do
It's
you?
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Invite me. But, you know, I think the difference is that, I mean, we're first and foremost filmmakers, and we make documentaries. You know, the commercial work is not the primary thing that we do. So maybe it would be a different thing if we were like 100% commercial filmmakers, but we're not. We're filmmakers. We do lots of different stuff. You have a scripted thing in development. You know, I have an animation thing in development, a VR thing in development. We're interested in telling stories. So I don't think I haven't come across anyone that looks at us ever that are like, oh, you made a sellout thing for Toyota. How could you do that? Or, you know, it's generally, hey, it's cool. What was it about?
Yeah.
You know.
And the other thing, it's funny because I do films, you know, and you do films like this too, that some people would consider activist films. socially relevant films.
Right.
And some people, you know, put labels on me, I don't know about you, as an activist.
Right.
And it's like the last thing I am. I sort of say this sometimes. My only, you know, where I stand is that I just don't want to add crap to the world. It's almost as simple as that. I'm not an activist. I just like to do, I'm a filmmaker, if I had to label myself. And yeah, and so whether it's commercials, whether, you know, they're just labels. And it's all about the work, and if the work stands up on its own.
We have a few more minutes, and I've exhausted my questions, and I hope you have some to ask the panel. Yes.
How can we characterize Cinnalon? I mean, it began as sort of a collective of documentary filmmakers, where we set out to basically make 3-minute films. That was the mandate. Like, we're going to make high-quality 3-minute films, and we're going to get them out into the world. Who was it? It was Jessica. Jessica, you, was it Steve? Steve, Morgan Spurlock, me, Jessica, Joe Berlinger, and a few others, and Cinnalon's been able to somehow get funding for these short films that we've been able to work on, and it's been a great partnership. And as Keith said, it's been great to make short films. Short films are, and you know, you definitely know. So that's what Cinnalon's been doing, and they can answer your questions better than me.
And you'd be amazed if you think 3 minutes is not enough time to tell a story with a beginning and a middle and an end. You should see some of the work that Cinnalon has done, for example, for General Electric, the Focus Forward campaign. It is truly jaw-dropping. There was a second part of the question about people of color and women getting into the directing racket.
Well, it just happens on this one. It is 3 white guys that did these films.
3 white guys.
But that being said, I think where Cinnalon really took off, in my opinion, was the Focus Forward series, and then there was We the Economy.
Right.
And how many filmmakers did you have on that? I mean, every... 30 All right. Right. Exactly. So we're talking about 50 films that, you know, African American filmmakers, Asian filmmakers. It's an interesting and very, I think we're both grateful to be in that mix with all of these great filmmakers.
Amazing.
I think there were even a couple of Jewish filmmakers.
Maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah. Talk about a unicorn. Any other questions? You must. These people are fantastic, and their work is fantastic. There must be something burning in your... Yes.
There you go. It's funny with other Cinnalon films, and it's just like with anything, like they work differently. Sometimes, like with Fire, like I looked for that film, that story for 8. We tried to get access for 8 months, but you know, things happen in different ways. With this, I think Toyota, I think they said, oh, there's this amazing organization called St. Bernard's Project, and what do you think about this? And we looked into it, and it was a challenge for me, quite frankly, because it was a story that sort of already happened. Like you followed it as it was going. I mean, you found that, yeah, it was happening, right? Sorry, it was happening, and this sort of happened already, so it was a challenge. But Zan and I went down, we talked to them, and we said, you know, there is a story here. It's 10-year anniversary of Katrina. People are still out of their homes. And there is a story here, and we just had to find it. So we knew that Zach and Liz and the amazing work they're doing was going to be part of the story, but we were running around New Orleans, and we found Mrs. Bernadine. So it was part what we call verite filmmaking, like following the action that's happening, but also, and it was never scripted per se. It was letting the people who are in the film talk for themselves, and then we get into the editing room and we find the story in the editing room.
Yeah, I mean, the process really was, they came to both of us and said, hey, we'd like you to do something here. In my case, it was at this hospital. and here's a clinic where people are going blind waiting for services. And that was really it. And ultimately what I went in with was a one-page treatment as to how I wanted to tell the story. And my story wasn't unfolding, actually. It actually already did happen.
Wow. That's good.
Most of it was, you know, with the systems put in place by Toyota, that already happened, which is why I was so concerned about how am I actually going to tell the story. So I need to find that character. And once I found the character, the idea was, well, let me see if I could tell this story through her vision and through her eyesight. And that was a great process for me, because I'd say I spent more time on the first day of shooting the whole opening sequence where it's from her POV. She was our consultant and telling us when we got it close to right. And we spent hours and hours. We were taking the lens off the camera, shooting it tinfoil light through the lens, doing all sorts of experimental stuff. And when she finally was like, that's it. That's like, I'd say 95% of what it looks like to see through my vision. I was really excited because
So cool.
that was like closest to the truth when you're trying to interpret what does someone whose retina was detached, what do they actually see? I don't know. I didn't calculate the hour. I mean, I shot this over the course of 3 days. The first day was pre-surgery, and I shot all the stylized stuff in the beginning, and then there was a surgery day, was the second day, and then the third day was the follow-up. So not a huge amount. It was all pretty selective shooting. I tend to not go into these projects where I know where I want the film to go, so I shoot a lot less, I think, than a lot of other people out there. So it's a pretty low shooting ratio.
I was just going to say, I think the last film I did, E-Team, was 375 hours. Born the Brothels was 175 hours. You're telling me 10 hours? That's all we shot on this? Just 10 hours. That's amazing. I consider that hardly anything for a 3-minute film.
Sure.
Wow. That's
Yeah, so all of the content will live on one central hub, which is toyotaeffect.com, and we will continue to build more and more stories and add to that, so that we can not only help people understand inside our company all of the great work that's going on. It makes us so proud to work for such a generous company, but then also share it with the world. So yes, we'll continue to build more and more stories on the Toyota Effect.
Marjorie,
Thank you.
Kief, Ross, thank you very much. Ladies and
Thank
gentlemen,
you.
thank you very much. Sinalon Toyota. Have a good afternoon.